Alrighty, let's get started. Okay, well, welcome to week 8. We have one more week left. Weeks 1 through 7 have helped us develop, hopefully, a strong foundation. That at this point in time, the hope being, and I don't know if anybody has stayed consistent with meditation practice outside of this room, that is just the natural hope of it, but despite that we can come to a place within our practices where we can be present. We've developed a awareness of our breath, which is what we did in week 1. The simplest thing was just bringing connection to breath to find a sense of safety and spaciousness within the breath. So that every time you get distracted or you feel tense or overwhelmed, that you can come back to your breath without resistance, without hesitation, without any, what's the word that we might want to use? I'll figure it out. That's okay. From week 1, and even a bit of week 2, in which we focused on breathing and coming back to the breath, we transitioned into developing a relationship to the body. So we became aware of our body. Understanding breath awareness and body embodiment. Week 4 is when we introduced ourselves to the field of Vedana, which is feeling tone. So we discussed that there are typically 3 types of feelings. There are pleasant feelings, unpleasant feelings, and neutral feelings. We talked about the sun as an example for that of, on a cloudy day, everything is neutral. We don't necessarily value that cloudy day as a positive feeling or an unpleasant feeling, but the moment sun makes its way through the clouds, pleasant feeling comes up. But that pleasant feeling can transition into an unpleasant feeling very fast the moment the sun disappears. It doesn't just go back to a neutral feeling of what it was before the sun was there. We have a little bit of resistance to accepting the clouds once again. We are holding on to sun. And when the sun starts to disappear, it's not in our control, but that pleasant feeling of the sun can transform into something a bit more bitter and unpleasant. Week 5, we introduced ourselves to states of mind. And these states of mind are what can sometimes manifest themselves within a meditation practice. So it may be even something that is something that you're dealing with before your practice even begins. So a state of mind in which, the mind is very restless, very agitated, very frustrated, will naturally lead to a meditation practice going in a certain direction. It's not to say that you can't bring yourself back to where you were before the anger, before the restlessness, but these states of mind are sometimes things that we have to understand. They are kind of the reason why no 2 meditation practices will be the same, because our mind is always changing. Our state of mind can always be influenced by the environment, by the people around us, by what we consume, both physically, mentally, emotionally. So it's the ability to see our mind state for what it is, to observe it clearly so that we can learn to work with it mindfully. Week 6 transitioned into some of those supportive qualities that assist us on the path of meditation. And it's the whole ability to find a steady mind, to cultivate a steady mind. It's the ability to find curiosity in this experience of meditation, which for many of us is quite boring. We're sitting, we're breathing. That is essentially all that is happening when we're here. So from the outside looking in, it's very simplistic. You don't really know what's happening. But each person internally is going through something different. And it's your ability to remain engaged with the moment, whatever that moment is, that will allow you to find a footing forward on this practice. And I think last week was hopefully a very important week for some of us because it brought in the heart qualities, the qualities of kindness, of compassion, of care, with the hope being throughout the 7 weeks that have passed before before last week's loving kindness meditation. We indirectly are being kind to ourselves. We have no choice. When the mind gets distracted, when we get overwhelmed, it does us no justice, it does us no favors to be hard on ourselves. So although we use simple terms of, coming back to the breath, of letting go, of acknowledging and accepting distractions, they have to be rooted in kindness. If they're rooted in something more harsh, then it ends up creating more inner resistance to the meditation experience. So the hope would have been that in learning how to relate to our meditation experience, or how we relate to our thoughts, our feelings, our body, our mind, if we can relate to these things with a bit more positivity, kindness, compassion, care, love, whatever those words are that work for you, that if you're able to exhibit those qualities for yourselves, then there's every single possibility that you can extend those qualities outwards to others that are dealing with tough thoughts, tough emotions, tough feelings, tough times. That the care that you work within yourself is naturally the care that you would be able to extend to others. And so today is less about any thinking sort of practice, but this is now where we can start to develop a deeper sense of insight in our meditation practices. So there is specifically a type of meditation that is known as insight meditation. It is an extension of Vipassana meditation, which is something that I've practiced in the past. It's built upon three very simple principles of Buddhist philosophy. So we'll get into a little bit of that to start with the practice. And then it's understanding how within our meditation practice we can be very directly aware of these principles. So the three principles are known as Anicca, Anatta, and Dukkha. Impermanence, non-self, and Dukkha has a few different meanings, but suffering is a common one. Unsatisfactoriness is another one. But let's just start off with Anicca, the understanding of impermanence. Simplest example, your breath. Your breath is always changing. It is impermanent in nature in the sense that it rises, stays, it passes away. It's just a wave of inhales and exhales. There's maybe a slight crescendo as you pause at the top of your exhale, and a soft valley as you pause at the bottom of your exhale. But you do not live your life with just one breath. It is a constant cycle of inhales and exhales. When we're talking about more physical sensations, impermanence manifests itself in the sense that when we're sitting and we start to sit, maybe the body is feeling fine. But then out of nowhere, something comes up in the body. Where did it come from? We don't know. But it fades as well. We feel the warmth of the sun on our skin. It appears. It feels permanent. It feels very real when it's there. But it is too also going to fade away. When we get very angry, once again, something may trigger us, but where does anger come from within us? We may not know. But it also comes up. It manifests in a certain way. Emotions carry energy, and that energy can be felt with temperature. It can be felt with tension. It can be felt with other sorts of physical sensations. But in that sense, something like anger comes up. It comes, it stays, and it could stay for a while, minutes, hours, days. But eventually, anger too passes away. And then likewise, just uncomfortable thoughts or, challenging thoughts that you don't wish to naturally entertain. They dissolve. They dissolve over time. They do not stay there forever, as much as the mind sometimes tries to trick us into thinking these things last forever. So the main thing about anicca, the understanding of anicca, is that we've experienced it up until this point. Within all of our practices, we are directly dealing with the fact that everything is changing. That in one moment things feel great while we meditate, next moment the mind has been distracted, it's slipped away. We bring our mind back and the breath is smooth and steady, and next thing you know, we are falling asleep. We wake ourselves up and then we start to feel some ache in the body, we start to feel some restlessness in the mind. There are things that are always changing. We don't need to necessarily try to control change. That is not what we're trying to do, but it's simply being aware that things change. If you can be simply aware that things change, it offers space, it offers freedom, because it places less burden on you to try to be the one that is influencing change. You're just there to observe change. Does that make sense? Quote I have written here from Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh. He often emphasized that when we look deeply into the nature of reality, so into the understanding of anicca, we can see that everything is always in motion. Although my hand is not moving, on a microscopic scale, there is so much moving that your eyes could not believe it, full of trillions of molecules in your body. So on a molecular level, I am constantly moving, doesn't matter how still I am. And it's almost the ability to drill down into that layer of reality that just allows you to notice just how much change is constantly around you. So when we recognize that everything can change and is changing, the hope is that we suffer less when things change. So if we have that acceptance in mind from the start, when something does change, and it may not change for the better, it could change for the worse, we don't let necessarily our emotions take over, because we have wisdom that will comfort our emotional reactions. So far, so okay? Mm-hmm. As always, it is one thing to mentally understand what is being said. It is a whole different ballgame to then apply it to life. So it all starts, though, with understanding what is being said. And if there's any questions that have to be asked, please ask. But the idea of impermanence is exactly that. Everything is changing. If we can acknowledge that everything changes, in the most cosmic scale, we are born, we pass away. That is change. And that is the biggest change that we resist. And we don't need to get into esoteric talks of what happens afterwards, but it is just understanding that everything is changing. Anatta, non-self. This one's sometimes a tricky one, but we can try our best to keep it simple. Do you control when a thought comes up? When you're sitting to meditate, are you the one in control of your thoughts coming up? Yeah. Some, but the thought itself coming up. When you are just asked to meditate, when the thought comes up, were you the one that brought up the thought?
I think you control what you do once it pops up.
Correct, but just before that, the thought that comes up, the emotion that comes up, the understanding here is that mentally here what we're going to speak of is that this mind state of ours is constantly shifting. So thoughts arise on their own. All we are asked to do is sit and breathe. And the mind goes on its own adventure. This is your monkey mind. It is the monkey that is within your mind. It is doing its own thing. So the way that we can find a little bit of freedom, a bit of spaciousness around this concept is that we often think that we are the ones that are thinking and feeling. I am angry. I am sad. And in the context of our meditation, or even I am restless, I am. But if these thoughts are coming and going, and we don't really know where the heck they come from, are they really us? A little bit, yes, but they are not fully us. We have to have that little bit of space. in the sense of my physical body once again. I call this my hand. But my hand is not just this thing. It is a series of parts. It is the fingers, it is the knuckles, it is the skin, it is the bones. So if I zoom out even further, if I say I am my body, what part should I point to? We say this is ourself. Where are we pointing to? We typically point somewhere probably here, up there. But when we zoom in, this is once again this whole thing of getting deeper and deeper into what is actual reality. We associate this as being the self, this construct that we consider us, me, mine, I. My body, this is me, this is who I am. But when we drill down, the arm is a series of parts. Upper arm, lower arm, elbow, shoulder, hand. We drill down here, yes, it's the wrist, it's the palm, it's the fingers. We drill into the finger, it's the dermis, it's the 7 layers of skin, it's the metacarpal bones, which is like the knuckle bones. But you drill, and once again, you're just left with energy, molecules. And we don't need to get, once again, too deep into it, but when we can observe things very carefully, requires that calm, steady mind. And when we can see the experience of what is happening, there's very little control over when something comes up in the body, in the mind. The itch that comes up on your skin, where did that come from? Sometimes, yeah, it's something probably on your skin, no doubt. A mosquito comes up, you want to swat it away. But we're sitting to meditate. The nose gets itchy. Where did that itch come from? The back starts to ache. Where did it come from? Not where it is. We know where it is. It's in the back. But where did it come from? That little bit of understanding that these things, they arise on their own. We don't have much control over it. Should help us in the sense that we don't need to get too attached in trying to fix it. So once again, if these thoughts come and go, if these feelings come and go, if these sensations come and go, are they really us? They come into the space being my body. My body is a vessel. This vessel surfaces with heat in this moment. I'm really warm, probably because I have my hair down. But where did this heat come from? It comes from the environment around me. It is a part of me, but it is not all of me. But if I give enough of my energy to the heat, I'm going to get really, 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 really warm. And all my energy goes towards the heat. If I get angry, there's a part of me that is anger, that is angered. Anger has come into my body. But that anger will also leave my body. That anger has come in like a guest coming in through the house. It'll stay for a bit, but it also leaves. What do I have else written here? So the main part of here is that by having this little bit of distance away from our thoughts, distance away from our feelings, distance away from our emotions. It's not that we're ignoring it, but we're trying our best to witness them as opposed to identifying with them. So we're aware of that, but we are not letting them consume us and take us over. So we are aware of the thought as it arises. But if we have that understanding in Anicca, of impermanence, then this thought that has come up, no matter how strong it is, we do not have to become emotionally involved in it. It is not us. It is there as a guest. It has surfaced up. But in doing so, if we can witness and observe these thoughts, emotions, and feelings as opposed to identifying with them, being attached to them, getting directly involved with them, then we can learn to observe the mind as opposed to becoming the mind. And the mind is where the me, the mind, the I resides. Mind up here in that sense. That I am angry, the thought usually starts up here. This is mine. This is mine. Because this is what the mind is attached to. The mind is attached to the body. So we cannot separate the two, but we learn to create distance between the two. Between the mind, between the body, between the mind, between our thoughts, between the mind, between our emotions. Have I lost you? Makes a little bit of sense?
It's very deep.
Yes and no, because once again, we have experienced all of these things up until this point. We are just naming them. So we are developing an actual understanding of what these things are. But within each meditation practice, we have had to deal with these experiences of anicca, of anatta, of dukkha, time and time again, but we've just never delved into them. Because when a thought comes up, what allows you to create distance between you and the thought? It comes from this little bit of understanding that you are not your thought, that you are not your anger. Anger is within you, and it shows up from time to time like an unwanted guest. But you are not your anger. So every time anger comes in, you don't have to become angry. There's a difference between noticing anger, which is witnessing the anger, and being angry, which is you identifying with anger. And that is the clearest example that I guess I can give in the sense of what directly anatta can relate to. When you sit to meditate and an emotion comes up, you notice it, you witness it, but you don't have to become emotionally involved with it. It's that little bit of space. And that little bit of space can offer you a lot of freedom. To not have to react to every single thing that is happening. Does that make a bit more sense, I guess, in that example?
It always made sense. But I'm putting this together with a revelation I had this week, that we live one breath at a time. And then, as you say, each breath is different. So it's putting it all together in my head.
Slowly.
Slowly.
Which leads us to the last tenet, dukkha. Dukkha sometimes is associated with misery, with suffering, but in the most simplest way, without having to turn dukkha into an enemy of some sort, something to fear against, something to resist against. It's just the subtle tension that gets created when we are trying to hold on to what is changing. Go back to the sun example. The suffering starts to arise the moment the cloud passes over the sun. Because we're holding on to that last little bit of sunshine and we don't want it to go. It provided us with a pleasant feeling. Warmth. We can associate warmth with pleasure in this sense on a cold day. And we know in our mind, in our body, that when the sun fades, the warmth will as well. So instead of coming to that place of acceptance of the sun came and now the sun's gone, we can very easily fall into this little trap in which we go from pleasant feeling, not to neutral, but then to unpleasant. And it's that little bit of understanding that stress often comes from wanting pleasant experiences to stay and unpleasant ones to go. And stress is, I guess, just the word that we can create or use because it's just tension-based. We create inner tension with ourselves to almost be unable to accept the moment for what it is. The moment was there with the sun. That moment's gone. That was your one breath. Your one breath to enjoy the sunlight, the sunshine. And then your next breath, you try your best to enjoy the clouds once again. But you're caught up in that moment with the sunshine still, which creates dissatisfaction, which creates a little bit of suffering, a little bit of dukkha when the clouds come again. It's not that you have anything against the clouds, but the sun brought you a certain pleasant feeling that you didn't want to let go of. So in that sense, when it comes to understanding dukkha, the pain of change is natural. That we can't really argue against. There is, depending on the kind of change that is happening, and naturally, there is the promise of life is the change of age, the change of health, and ultimately the passing away of life. That is change. There is natural pain with change. But suffering comes from resisting change. So there is the physical experience. In my deep stretch classes, I say this often. There are two realities that we're often working with. There's definitely hundreds more, but there's two at the bare minimum. There is the physical reality of what is happening in your body. In my deep stretch classes, we stay in some of our postures, deep stretches, for upwards of 5, 6, 7 minutes at a time. Most of them 3 to 5, but occasionally I sprinkle in a little bit of extra suffering. Why not? A little bit of extra pain, but let's just say 3 to 5 minutes. Okay. Physically, there is something being felt in the body. We can call it pain, we can call it discomfort, we can name it in an intense sensation, because it is a deep stretch. The suffering comes from how the mind relates to that experience. This is hard. How much longer are we going to be here? I don't know if I can do this. All of the additional stress that is being thrown on top of the physical experience. And I have to reassure them, within the class, physically, we aren't putting our body into any position of risk, of danger. My job as a yoga teacher is to guide classes through the experience of the stretch with safety. So there is that reassurance there. But there's a very, very small part of the brain that is trying to convince you that you are dying and that the only thing that you can do to not die is get the heck out. And in that sense, it's just get out of the stretch. And it's a very small part, but it can turn into such a big part of the practice so fast. That this little voice inside of you that is trying to say, look at me, I'm real. This is a real thought. I'm not just coming and going, I'm here to stay. And you have to get out of this stretch, otherwise I'm not gonna leave. And it's our ability to notice that mental part of it. Not always easy to do because the mind feels very strong. But that is the main thing, the pain of change. My deep stretch classes, I say we're not stretching to feel good. We're stretching to create space. And creating space is not always an easy thing to do. It is sometimes a painful thing to do. It is a transitioning thing to do. But the suffering is our mind's ability or inability to accept the change. Yes?
So I go in house deep stretch class. It's amazing. Everybody should go. But my question is, you talk about the nervous system in that class, and you'll talk about, so I remember you came over to me once because we were doing like some hamstring stretch and my leg was shaking. Yeah. And you were like, you have to get out of this. And because I was trying to push myself, and you said, your nervous system, what do you say always? If your nervous system is your body's way of something. So how does that play into the suffering thoughts? Like one could be just, my brain has run away. Yeah. Is it convinced I'm dying? Yep. But how does your nervous system play into that? Okay, so in the example that you're using and what I'm going to try my best to correlate, the mind will convince you that everything is binary. Or not everything, but in some of these situations, your mind will convince you that you either do something or you don't do it. So it's either 1, 0, yes or no. Wisdom in this sense is allowing you to see the gray, which means in your hamstring stretch example, you're still going to stay in the stretch, but you don't stretch as deep. You don't, remember, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do I tell you? You should be at like a 6, right? 6 or 7. Okay. Yeah. 6, 7, yes. And what happens is that many people, when they come into a deep stretch class,
And it's through no fault of their own, but they may not have the awareness of their body. They may not have a relationship to their body. So even though they're not looking for something beyond a 7, they find a 9. And at that point, your 9 is going to smother you. Your 10, the feeling of a 10 out of a 10 deep stretch is very hard to deal with. It is like a child screaming in your face. Whereas if we can pull back, we're still in a deep stretch, but it's a 7. It's challenging. And what I said last week was that one of the beautiful things about these practices, these inner work practices, whether it's yoga or meditation, there is some component of struggle. And one of the wonderful things about this practice is that it allows us to struggle. We're struggling with the simple fact that sometimes we just can't sit. We can't sit and breathe because the mind is restless. Or in a deep stretch class, we have to struggle with finding what the most optimal stretch is for us. If you're holding a stretch for 5 minutes, there's no way that you're going to hold it if it's at a 10. And type A personalities are my favorite people to watch because they go for their 10s. They find the deepest stretch imaginable in their body, but they can only hold it for 30 seconds. And then they go from a 10 to a 0 because their nervous system is so overwhelmed, it gets fried. They give themselves a few breaths to build up some confidence again, and then they go looking for another 10. Whereas this is a slow, steady kind of approach to things in the context of your deep stretch. So the mind will convince you that it's binary sometimes, that it's either yes or a no, all in, all out, black or white. And what we have to sometimes understand in the context of a deep stretch class is that it's okay to pull back a bit, that we don't have to leave the situation completely, but that we can hold space still with less intensity. So I guess in the context of a meditation practice, let's assume that something traumatic has happened in your life. Somebody has passed away. A change has occurred, pain is there. You have to develop capacity to deal with that change. So there is mental and there's also physical. If the passing happened yesterday, you're not expected to sit with that grief fully today. But over time, you open yourself up to it more and more and more. I did a visualization sort of practice with a lady before, and I think I've talked about this story, in which we just understand the continuity of our mind, how one moment of the mind leads to the next, to the next, to the next. And for this lady, we were going back in time. I won't get into the details of it, but essentially towards the reflection part of the practice, I asked her how it went. She goes, I couldn't go beyond 2 days. Okay, what happened 2 days ago? My cat died 2 days ago. So you're not expected to process all of the grief of it, but we learn to hold space for it over time. In that sense, there is mental suffering because there is a resistance to accept it. The pain has occurred. That change was a natural thing that may have happened. Who knows? I don't know. But we can lessen our suffering over time. No doubt to say that person in the moment, in those days and coming weeks, is suffering. There is grief there, unprocessed grief. But as we process the grief of loss, of change, we can lessen our own suffering. It takes a lot of willpower to expose yourself, to sit with the uncomfortable truth, the pain and discomfort of loss. But if it's something that gets stored within us and goes unprocessed, it ends up creating toxins in the body. It dampens everything within us. And we have to learn to release and let go. And understanding how to skillfully work with dukkha is not that you go searching out for everything that makes you miserable. That is not the intention of the practice. But it's about being able to basically get to a point over time where you do not argue with reality. And reality is that things are always changing. It is everything that is prior to this discussion. The impermanent nature of things, the non-personal way of looking at things, the not self, the Anatta way of looking at things. But if we can do that, then once again, what this does for us is it creates space. Space for us to view these things that are natural things as a part of life with a bit more clarity, with a bit more compassion, with a bit more kindness, with a little bit less resistance, with a little bit less judgment. Makes sense? Somewhat?
Can you describe a deep stretch? I'm having trouble visualizing something that would be a deep stretch.
Stretch your hamstring for 5 minutes.
Is that standing on one leg?
No, you could just be like lying down, right leg in the sky. Grab onto your leg with your hand, with your strap.
Oh, okay.
You want to demonstrate or something? But like, or, it could be something very soft. Happy baby. Are you familiar?
Yeah.
But if you hold happy baby for 5 minutes,
Not a happy baby then.
some babies get grumpy. Exactly. But there is every possibility of keeping that baby happy for 5 minutes.
Okay.
But if you stretch too deep, then you're going to start to alternate or oscillate between happy, grumpy, happy, grumpy, happy, grumpy. And then there's every possibility that if you work skillfully through those 5 minutes, that you don't rush yourself, you are patient with the body in allowing the body to open up. A lot of times in Happy Baby, what I joke about is that it's not a workout for your hands, because a lot of people are pulling on their legs to stretch deeper, instead of allowing the legs to do the job in opening up on their own. So there is a skillful way to work with deep stretching, but Happy Baby is the best example I can give. That.
You did that last week.
Yes.
It's the poses you do, you just hold them for longer, right? And like the one thing I have learned, because I learned it, we did that hamstring stretch a little while ago, because I am a type A person, I just want to keep going, but it's just connecting with your mind and your body and knowing what your limit is. And if you are kind and patient to your body, you create that space and then you can go deeper. Do you know what I mean? So it can start off as like a 7-8, but come down to like a 4-5, and then you're out, and then in that 5 minutes you can go deeper. So it's really great.
So the understanding there is that some of what you feel in that intensity is physical discomfort. How much of it varies, but there is a contributing factor of the mind that also layers on top of that. Physically, just given how much tension we hold in the body, we may not have control or as much agency over working with the physical reality. We can't change that. But mentally, we have a lot more power than we naturally know. We have a lot more influence over dealing with how we respond to mental suffering. So in that sense, so she said it went from, let's just say from a 7 down to a 4. So that means 4 is probably the physical suffering. But the extra 3 could have come from the mind, or even an extra 1 could have come from the mind and the physical body softens a bit more. But there is that distinction in understanding that physically there is change that happens, pain that occurs, discomfort that arises. But for each layer of physical pain, physical discomfort, the mind often, without us knowing or without us being aware of it, throws on its own layering as well. And this is what we're dealing with. This is what our whole practice is about. We cannot change the physical unless you get a new body, but I don't know if you're hiding it, let me know. But the physical cannot really change. You can go to the gym 7 days a week, but you're still going to be walking the same path everyone else walks. The mental is what we're all trying to focus on here. And it's a very overlooked portion when it comes to dealing with things, because often we bury things here. We repress them, we suppress them, we silence them, we ignore them. and it just ends up caking up even harder, which means like the grime is that much thicker to get rid of. But this is what we're dealing with. This is what we're hoping to deal with. It is the understanding that mental suffering is a lot more within our control than we think it is. And the hope being that like these tenets of Buddhist philosophy, Anicca, Anatta, and Dukkha, they help us by giving us a bit more space to observe what we have been observing over the last 7 weeks. Okay. Let's observe impermanence, anicca, anatta, dukkha in real time. So we will transition the lessons of this practice into a simple guided meditation. So, as we always do, finding a comfortable seat. When it comes to working with today's meditation practice, although we have spoken explicitly about these tenets, you don't have to go looking for them. They're already there. We will just be able to get a bit more aware of them being there. But before we even get into that, let's start by establishing a connection to our anchor. Anchoring our mind into our body, anchoring our mind onto our breathing. Slow process, gradual process. The body gets soft. Muscles get relaxed a little bit, but not too relaxed. Don't want to fall asleep. We feel a sense of inner strength within the posture we have taken. Back is strong, we have proper posture, spine is long. And for some of us, it just requires a mental reminder every few minutes, could be that you check back in with posture. Until the habit is second nature, it may require some additional accountability. Just bringing a deeper sense of awareness to our breath at this point in time. And our breath becomes the simplest yet clearest example of everything that we've been trying to talk about and learn about today. Notice the impermanent nature of your breath. Notice the beginning of your breath, the middle of your breath, the end of your breath. As much as we can say that I am breathing, we can also understand that the breath is already happening. It comes into this space, which is this physical vessel of ours, and it leaves. We can maybe notice the subtle shifts in our breath. But your breath is the purest example of these three tenets. The impermanent nature of your breathing. It arises, it passes. It enters, it exits. It comes, it goes. The element of anatta in your breath. That although you are the one breathing, the breath is just simply coming and going. And if you wish to explore the dukkha element of your breath, which you don't have to, you would just simply hold your breath. And after a while, suffering would arise because you have no choice but to let it go. So in that sense, we understand that this relationship to our breath is impermanent. We do not control it. We do not own it. It is always changing. For others, there may be a bit more awareness around sensations on the body that change. What may feel pleasant in one moment shifts to a sense of being unpleasant. The body may get tense, the body may get soft. The mind may be quiet, the mind may become loud. Sounds may come, sounds may go. All is impermanent in nature. And when it comes to this whole practice of ours, the main thing we are constantly doing is learning to let go. Letting go doesn't mean that we need to ignore, to become indifferent, to force ourselves to detach from an experience. It's simply relaxing the grip. Relaxing how tightly you're holding on to an experience. And although we haven't named it, we've spoken to it, what makes letting go possible is kindness, metta. So for the next few minutes of practice, as we work with a deeper sense of silence, bring awareness to feelings that may surface. Feelings on the body, feelings within the mind. Pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, doesn't matter. Understanding that it passes. Find freedom in that. If a thought pops up in your mind, notice it. It may linger for a bit, and we can notice that. But without pushing it away, we also notice how it dissolves away. And we can notice that. So please just continue to breathe for a few minutes longer as you notice. Noticing all that comes, noticing all that goes. And you just stay sitting and breathing. Slowly coming out of your meditation, coming back to your body, deepening your breath, inviting warmth if you need it. Everything that we've practiced so far over the past 7 weeks has just been training us to see a bit more clearly what we are trying to see today. The impermanent nature of experience, the non-personal relationship that we have to most experience, and that there is a way to deal with suffering, a way to deal with discomfort that makes it so that we don't have to hold so tightly onto certain things. Anything to reflect upon from your personal meditation practice from today? It was 10 minutes. The main thing that we wanted to see was just see a bit more clearly what we've been seeing, that the breath has a beginning, middle, and end, and there's this constant flux of in and out. That although we have some personal relationship in believing that the breath is ours. That ultimately we are just a space that accepts breath, we receive it, and we release it. So it's a relationship that we have with the breath. It's not necessarily our breath to hold on to. And as I joked, the clearest example of you wanting to understand the nature of suffering with breath, hold it. Because eventually there's going to come a point in time where you have no choice but to let it go. And that is kind of what we end up doing sometimes with own emotional experiences or mental experiences. We hold on to it so tightly until we have no choice but to release it. If there's one main thing that like a whole practice like this, especially in, and there's books that you can definitely read from Buddhist monks and mindfulness teachers that get more into the weeds of these details of Buddhist philosophy. But if we've started to notice change with a bit more clarity today, the hope would be is that the peace that we've been trying to find from meditation practices, mindfulness practices, or just living more mindfully, that peace doesn't come from stopping change. It comes from understanding it. And that is a big part of this mindfulness practice. It's about understanding what is already happening. These things happen. Thoughts come, thoughts go. Feelings come, feelings go. Life happens. Things you don't want happening in life will happen. Things you do want happening in life won't happen. And we can't stop some of these things from happening. But we learn from a mindfulness practice how to deal with these things in a better way, how to build a stronger relationship to things that are already happening. And in that sense, we start to understand it with a bit less resistance, a bit less judgment. And by relaxing the grip, relaxing ourselves into the experience, peace naturally comes up to the surface. Because we're not trying so hard to find peace. It's already there. I don't have anything else.
I mean, I would just say, because you asked for reflection, I think over the last couple of weeks, what I've noticed or what meditation brought to me is just a gratefulness, right? Like, I don't think I had the gratefulness that I did before, even the suffering. You start to see it as gratefulness, right? Like, the ability to live life, to take up, like, you always say, you take your first breath and then your last breath on your way out, right? Like, the fact that we get to breathe in and out every single day, to me, is a gift. And I've also understood the power of breath, right? And how you can use it to calm yourself, your nervous system, to meditate. Breath is a very powerful tool that I don't think you realize until you do start to meditate and you start creating that connection. But for me, definitely when I meditate, it's just gratefulness. So even when the suffering comes in, the thoughts come in, I'm just so grateful that I took another breath. Does that make sense?
You have the capacity to view suffering not as an enemy.
I'm getting there, yeah, for sure.
Which takes time, but we have a very averse relationship to pain and suffering, no doubt. It's a defense mechanism for most of us, and it's very natural. Mindfulness allows us to see these things that we resist quite often, not from a place of judgment or contempt. And in doing so, we hold space. We create more capacity to see these things not as enemies, but as potential learning lessons, as friends, as a gift, as something that can ultimately lead to our liberation, something that can lead to us finding peace, freedom, whatever it is that we're seeking. But it comes from holding space and creating space. Cool. Nothing else left to do today. Great job. Thank you all for watching at home, online.